This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
Ben Settle, super practical.
I'm not telling people to have a mistress. I'm teaching you, learn the lesson from the people who have a mistress, because there's many business lessons that apply.
Pious.
There's a part in the book of Revelation where Jesus says, I want you either hot or cold. I'm spewing lukewarm churches out. And I think it's a good way to look at your list.
Romantic to his very core.
Once in a while, I'll give my girl a present, like a Snickers bar or something.
And totes tender.
If someone asks you to walk on eggshells, smash the eggshells and let the chips fall wherever they may.
Adored by feminists everywhere.
It takes a strong woman to admit when she's wrong.
Not a judgmental bone in his entire body.
I look at all the free information people give just on Facebook and I go, what a bunch of time hose.
Has a PhD in armchair philosophy.
In the land of dumbasses, the smartass is king.
You'll never meet a more sensitive guy.
If you really care about people, you shame the hell out of them. This is Ben Settle of the bensettle.com podcast. So, Jonathan, since you did, apparently you're getting a little too uppity and hoity-toity for me. You didn't even look at the notes I sent you. So this is all going to be new to you. Or at least, won't be new to you, but what? Better have a good.
I feel like I shouldn't. No, you know what? I feel like I shouldn't look at him. I shouldn't look at him, and then I miss you. And then when I get on the air, it's all new shit to me, and I'm so excited about it. It's like, this is the way we need to do this.
That's fine with me. From now on, I will not send you the notes. How's that sound?
Oh, wow. No, but you know what? I still need the title. Send the notes. I just won't look at them.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Well, had you read the notes, had you taken the time out of your busy schedule, skiing with Cupcake and all that, and just taken 5 minutes out of your busy, very busy schedule, you would know that this episode, I'm going to talk about documentaries that I think all marketers and copywriters and anyone in the business of persuasion, or just in business in general, should watch, and not just watch once, but watch several times.
Okay.
You know, probably a few of them are going to be a little weird, but if you just do it, and again, and I know people listening to this, there's a lot of people, I say a lot of people, we don't even have a lot of people listening. So a lot of the people who are listening to this will consider themselves too good to watch some of these, and it'll be beneath them and below them. And, it won't be worth cutting into their Facebook time, liking pictures of cats and all that. But if they just do it, if they just watch all these, and there's many more I could have done, but I don't want this to be an hour-long podcast. If they just watch the ones I'm going to show, which is approximately 3, 4, 5, 7 documentaries, that's, about 7 hours of your life, give or take. Actually, some of these are longer than an hour. So 8, maybe hours of your life. I think you'll find your copy more persuasive. You'll get really cool ideas you're not going to get reading your typical books. I can tell you that much. A lot of the stuff that I do that a lot of other people don't do that I know works, I got from being inspired and getting ideas from these particular documentaries. And something else to think about with documentaries, and I wrote an email about this not all that long ago, is the best ones are structured in a way where they're for maximum persuasion. Like they're trying to, they have all these documentaries have an agenda for the most part, and they're trying to sell you on their agenda. And if you look at it and study it just from a copywriting point of view, the good ones, and any documentary you watch, I think you'll find it a very profitable activity. And with that said, Jonathan, do you have any questions before I dive into these documentaries?
This is so settled with the one email workday. That gives you 8 hours to watch TV.
Well, that's
still write copy.
This is what I would say. I mean, if you're doing the one email workday, this shouldn't even be an issue. Like, TV time is in abundance. All right, so the first 3 are actually about the late actor Steve McQueen. And I'm a big Steve McQueen fanboy. I think there's a lot you can learn from this guy. I don't think there ever will be another person just quite like him, and for many reasons. But there are 3 documentaries. There's probably more. In fact, I know there's more about him, but I'm only going to cover 3 of them. One of them all 3 of them you can get on Amazon. If you have Amazon Prime, I don't know if they're free or anything. You might have to pony up a little cash to rent them or whatever. Well worth the $3.99, in my opinion. The first one was from 1990, which is 10 years after the guy died. He died at a very young age. I don't know if you know this, John. He only lived to be like 50. I mean, he was...
oh, wow.
But he probably lived the most, packed life. He's one of those guys because he was also a great race car driver. Like he was an actor, the world's greatest actor at the time, at least the world's most highest paid. But he was also a race car driver. And he used to say, I don't know if I'm a race car driver or actor, or if I'm an actor race his cars. But that was his thing. But so he was always kind of living on the edge. And the first documentary about him that I'm going to reveal is called Steve McQueen, Man on the Edge. I believe it's what it's called. And it's from 1990. So a lot of the people who are interviewed in it have joined the choir invisible. And so be it. But it's good. The big takeaway from that one, at least for me, and I've watched it many, many times, there's many lessons you can get from it, is the way he would go after what he wanted. I mean, there was once this guy decided he was going to do something or get something, whether it be a role or money, the girl, whatever it is, he would go out and get it. And like, for example, in the movie The Magnificent Seven, and I've talked about this before, but I am going to keep talking about this, John, because it's that important.
It's your show, man.
In the movie The Magnificent Seven, he was not the top billed guy. This other guy, Yul Brynner, was the top billed guy. It was supposed to be about him. It's a Western. But Steve McQueen would steal scenes from this guy constantly, always shaking his gun or his hat or something whenever the camera was on Yul Brynner, so that by the time you watch this movie, and I don't think Steve McQueen had more than like 10 lines of dialogue in the entire movie, you actually thought it was a Steve McQueen movie because he would steal these scenes. He just took over the scenes. And that's not an accident, which I'll talk about a little bit about him on one of these other documentaries. That was not an accident. He was very, very precise about that sort of thing. And there's a lot you can learn about positioning your market and positioning your business and your sales letters and emails and all that just by observing how he did that. It's very easy to steal customers and clients from people if you understand positioning. So that's the first one. Steve McQueen, Man on the Edge. It may not be exactly Man on the Edge, but it's something on the edge. The second one, and this came out a couple of years ago, is called I Am Steve McQueen. And it was narrated by Robert Downey Jr. and Kristen Crook, I forget how you say. She played in Smallville. She played Lana Lame. Is a lot of fans would call her not Lana Lane, but Lana Lame, because her character is pretty lame. But she was in Smallville, and they both kind of co-narrated. Not a whole lot there as far as those two narrating. Although Kristen Crook apparently was part of this like weird cult I just found out. In fact, a couple of actresses were. That's a whole other thing.
Bembo's Lair.
That's a whole other thing, but it has nothing to do with documentaries or anything. But the things, okay, so there's a lot you can learn from this one too. I've seen this one probably 4 or 5 times now. And one is he was a very insecure guy. Steve McQueen is an extremely insecure guy. And he's even quoted as saying insecurity is good because it keeps you from getting complacent. And that his whole life was just trying to get, like, he had no father. And so he's always trying to get approval from people. And so that drove him. The reason I bring this up is because a lot of people, except me and you, Jonathan, you and I do not fall into this, so we can't use this. But a lot of people are damaged in some way. Okay. Now you and I are not saddled with this inadequacy. But whatever your damage is, and everybody's got some kind of damage. Everyone's got some kind of pain, some kind of insecurity driving them. You should use it to your advantage. There were people when I was growing up who tried to keep me down in various ways. And to this day, I just love the fact that I love being Facebook friends with them and them seeing that I'm way more successful than them. Now, you could say that's a very petty motivation, but it works. And I don't care how petty a motivation is. If it works, it works. There are people who are just insecure about being broke or insecure about living in poverty. And that drives them to do really great things in business. Now, you shouldn't let it consume you as far as like worrying about it too much, but by all means, use that emotion as it comes up. And because Steve McQueen did that kind of stuff, he was very much just an original. Everything he did was very, very original. And even his first wife said, it was his destiny to be great because he's just such an original. And a lot of people should keep that in mind, in this world of swiping and copying and, all that, Jonathan.
Funnel hacking.
Yeah, all that funnel hacking or whatever they call it, hacking. Everybody's just, I get people every time I change my squeeze page, Jonathan, there's some idiot will literally try to like rip it off word for word and then just like fill in like Betty Crocker, fill in their market, their
nice.
Next. And I catch them doing this and I go, do you realize that this is actually psychologically keyed toward my audience and the people I want? It's not going to do you any good, but they don't ever get that because they're not trying to they're not looking at their market and their product and saying, how can I fit this in and make it something they're not seeing anywhere else? But so be it. But that's what I got from the second one. I mean, I got a lot of other stuff too, but those are the main ones. Finally, there's Steve McQueen, American Icon, which I didn't realize this, Jonathan, but I remember the week before I saw it, I saw this thing advertised in the local rag here in Bandon. They have this thing called Coffee Break, and it's just like this little free thing you can get. It's got classifieds on every day. And there was this church that was advertising that they're going to screen Steve McQueen, American Icon. I'm like, well, that is a weird thing for a church to screen because he was not exactly someone you would think of as like this godly guy. Like he was chasing girls and doing drugs and living the life and all that. And but apparently this documentary, and this is also a good thing to study just from a copywriting point of view, is a sales pitch for Christianity. There's no doubt when you watch this thing, there is an agenda, but it's
Nice.
it's not done in a preachy way. Like you can still watch and enjoy it regardless. But when you watch this, that is the agenda. And it's very subtle at first, but it becomes very obvious at the end. But besides that, this is where I remember they were talking about Steve McQueen's ability to position himself above other actors, because he would act when he first got his first gig, which was for this TV show called Wanted Dead or Alive. And back then, it was really hard for a TV actor to switch into movies. So he was one of the first people to do that too. But when he was working on Wanted Dead or Alive, he would sit there for hours apparently and study and talk and ask questions to the camera people because he wanted to understand the technical side of things. So wherever he was posing, wherever he put his mouth or his chin, his eyes, if he did something with his body, it was all very deliberate to get the maximum positioning in a shot. And that to me is that's the attitude people should take in writing ads and emails and all of that. Every word should have some point, and you should study the technical side of whatever it is you're doing, and so you can understand how that works, especially when it comes to website design and all that. Another lesson you can there are a lot of lessons in this one too, but another one that you can kind of take, I don't know, the things you do today are going to affect you tomorrow. So when he was like 18 or 19 and he was in the Marines and he got caught chasing girls one weekend or whatever, and so they put him on duty where he had to like clean out these tanks, the asbestos out of tanks, which, back then I don't think they understood how dangerous that was.
Wow.
Well, because he was breathing all that asbestos in, he ended up dying of mesothelioma, which is something you get from asbestos, and it just festers in your body for 20 or 30 years. And that's why he died at 50. And I don't know, he was, what you do 20 years ago can affect you today, I guess is the only moral of the story I can tell you out of that. Quit screwing around. So those are the first three documentaries. The next one I am commanding everyone to watch. This is not a tip. This is a prescription. Okay. Is Johnny Carson, King of Late Night. It's something PBS did. You can find it on Amazon. I think you might have to buy it. Sometimes it's free on there. Sometimes it's not. And there's a lot. I remember doing a whole issue of Email Players, or a big part of it, about Johnny Carson, the late Johnny Carson, who was like the king of late night. I mean, I know there's a lot of millennials who have no clue who I'm talking about, or they think Jimmy Kimmel's the funniest guy in the world. Well, all these guys that in Arsenio Hall, all those guys worshipped at the altar of Johnny Carson. He was the one they all learned from. He was he just was so good at this stuff. And one thing you should watch, what you can do this free on YouTube, is just watch Johnny Carson monologues. They are amazing examples of persuasive communication, how to be funny, how to be infotaining, how to, not be boring, basically. He was very witty. There's just a lot you can learn just watching his monologues. And it's also very just a fun thing to do. People would just watch the show just for the first 9 minutes to get the monologue. Like entire families would just go around just because he was so good at it. So something to think about. He would do a lot of social commentary to make a point. So he would do it. So if you want to make a point about social commentary, you want to make a point, you can use social commentary to do it. So he'd make jokes, for example, I'm just thinking of one off the top of my head. He was talking about Richard Nixon. This was back when everyone wanted him to resign and all that. And he goes, I believe he said, Richard Nixon has the Vietnam flu. It drags on and just won't quit. Because he's talking about like the Vietnam War was like, it wouldn't stop. And he would do stuff like that. Now, he would never question anyone's patriotism or anything like that. But he would take shots at everyone. Clinton, Reagan, whoever it was, Nixon, Jimmy Carter, all of them. But he never, this is the big thing, because a lot of people don't know how to troll properly. They like go out there and insult people, He was a great troll, but he did it in a way that was persuasive and you didn't hate the guy afterwards. He was good at self-deprecating. Now, a lot of people do this way wrong. Jonathan, you ever see people out there self-deprecating? I mean, you almost feel sorry for them.
No, they feel sorry for themselves.
They feel very sorry for themselves. Yeah, they're victimizing themselves. He would do it in a funny way. Like this guy had 3 horrible marriages, or at least 2 really horrible ones. I think the third one was the charm. Or maybe he had 4 wives. I can't remember. He had a lot of wives. And so he'd go on a monologue and he'd say, I'm back for more. I told the justice of the peace. He'd say stuff because a lot of people had heroes, so-and-so, so-and-so. Mine was Henry VIII, because that guy all those wives. And, but that's how he would do it. And you can do that in emails, and it's very powerful. He was also a master of of what the pickup artist industry calls agree and amplify. And this is where when somebody tries to like troll you or something, or they accuse you of something, you don't just agree with it, you amplify it and you make it sound silly. So we actually did a whole episode on this, Jonathan, in the old Ben Settle show. So that's in the archives. You'll have to go on my site.
Good luck.
Yeah. Good luck. Well, it's from 2015, I think. I don't know. It's on there somewhere. But we did a whole episode about that. But I remember one of the ones he did where he came out and everyone was clapping and all this. And he goes, don't stop. He goes, this is America and you have the right to worship. And then, of course, they just started going on more. Or he would say things like, he would make fun of like people always saying, these rich people, these evil rich people and all that. And he goes, some of us have to cut back. I've decided I'm not going to have my two butlers hold up my my bed anymore when I'm sleeping or something like he would just agree and amplify if somebody accused him of that kind of stuff. Very, very powerful thing. He was great at making this like skeleton dances where you take something and about your product that's a bad thing and you actually make it a reason to buy. So in his monologues, you'll see a lot of his monologues were just badly written because he didn't necessarily write them all. But if they were really bad and no one laughed, he would actually turn it into a reason to laugh. He was a master at it. And you can go on YouTube and see examples of that. There's several of them on there. But that alone is a skill. That's not something that you just wake up with. That's something he honed over years and years and years. And we can learn it just by watching him. So that's the King of Late Night. There's other things you can learn from that, but those are some highlights. Another one's called Mutants, Monsters, and Marvels. Now, this is, I don't know if you can get this anywhere other than DVD. I have a physical DVD of it. And it's where Kevin Smith, the guy who directed Clerks, recently had a heart attack, I believe, is alive still, but recently had a heart attack. He interviewed the great Stan Lee. And this was back in like 2002. And there's so many lessons you can get from this documentary. If you want to call this a documentary, I don't know if the Q&A is really, John, is that considered a documentary, a Q&A?
I don't know.
Okay,
well, you know what?
We'll just say it is.
Now we have Ben Settle documentaries right on here too.
Yeah, well, I guess they're all documentaries. There's a lot you can learn from this, but like three things that stand out for anyone who can learn from this is Marvel and DC were rivals. They still are rivals, but Marvel was always bigger. And Stan Lee would always do things to try new things and new ideas, whatever made sense. He was always in touch with the market, i.e. his readers, with his soapbox column, everything. He had letters to the editor and all that. So he would do things, and then DC would copy it. They'd say, oh, well, look, Marvel's putting like big red colors on their covers now. Let's do that. And then the next month, Marvel would do something else. And it got to the point where they were copying Stan so much that Stan would purposely mess with them and do things that he knew didn't work as well, just to screw with them. And there's a lot to be said for that in this age of copycats. I do this in emails, Jonathan, sometimes. I will do things I know don't work just because I know people are copying sometimes. Something I learned from the great Matt Fury. He would talk about doing the same thing. And
red herring.
Absolutely. There's nothing like screwing with people's heads like copycats' heads. It's so funny. So he was very good at positioning. Another thing that I remember standing out was he was talking about Spider-Man, because he created the character Spider-Man. And he said when he was writing Spider-Man, that a lot of people were tuning in to Spider-Man, not just to watch Spider-Man fight, but for Peter Parker. And is just as much a Peter Parker strip as it is a Spider-Man strip. And his biggest challenge, he said, writing Spider-Man, he wrote the first like 100 issues or something. He said the biggest like challenge he had was coming up with new problems to give Peter Parker. It's like, and there's a lot to be learned from that, because learning the problems that plague your market is what will make your emails, your copy better or not. A lot to learn from Stan Lee. Okay, so we have two more documentaries to cover. This is already going a little late, Jonathan. I'm already past the 18-minute mark, and Daddy likes to get these down on 15 minutes or something. The next one, now this is one of the weird ones that nobody's going to watch. And honestly, I don't even know where you'd find it other than you can try to find it on YouTube, I guess. And it's called UFOs, The Hidden Truth. Now, before anyone goes and YouTubes that or Googles that, realize that there's like several documentaries called UFOs, The Hidden Truth. I'm talking about one that's like from a place made by a place, I think it's called K House or something like that. It's actually a Christian publisher. And the whole point of this was to show that UFOs are not space beings, but they're actually angelic beings that are tormenting people. Now, whether you agree with that or not, it doesn't matter. The point is the belief structure of this documentary is such a perfect belief structure of how you can structure ads. I mean, it starts out by telling stories, then it goes into like how this could possibly be, how UFOs really couldn't work the way everyone thinks they do. Like, how far away they are. It just doesn't really make much sense. And then it went into like hard proof, like hard proof that stuff is going on, and including social proof from like pretty much any, like people with tons of credibility all talking about this stuff. And then only after all that, only after it gets you believing, okay, there's something going on here, does it throw in the Bible stuff. It doesn't come out talking about the Bible stuff, because if it did, it would lose all the readers. So what they did is it's kind of like that Steve McQueen one where you don't really know it as a Christian agenda until the end. This is very similar, but you could think it's all bullcrap. It doesn't matter. If you watch how they did it, is very brilliant. And finally, there's a documentary, and I should have been better prepared for some of these, Jonathan. I'm just, because I didn't look the names up all these, but this is on Amazon Prime too. And if you just type in Amazon villains, comic book villains, there's this documentary about villains from the DC comic books company. And it's all about villains. That's what the whole thing is about, is how they think and why there's, what makes them tick and all this. Very fascinating. But the thing that I got most out of it was, and this is something I've known for a while, but I didn't really have it kind of ingrained the way I wish it had been the whole time, is heroes are always reacting to the villains. The villains are the proactive ones and the heroes are reactive. So in your business, it behooves you to be the one making all of your competition react, and you be the one that's proactive. And you can only do that by understanding the fundamentals better than them, understanding the market better than them, and testing ideas that everyone else is too scared to test. So that's all we got for this week, Jonathan. There's a lot. This is not an exhaustive list. I actually was going to list another like 4 or 5, 6 more, but I think that'll do it. Next week, I'm going to reach into the sack here and grab some questions, do some Q&A. So that'll be next week.
All right. Documentary next week. Can't wait. That is a wrap for another bensettle.com podcast. See you next time.
You've been listening to the bensettle.com podcast. To download yourself a free issue of Ben's prestigious $97 per month email players newsletter, which is going to show you 24 ways to write emails people eagerly read, click, and buy from, head on over to www.bensettle.com. Well, off you go. You know it makes sense.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.